But we need to talk about one part of the game that when I first started playing LARP, didn't realize was as important as it actually is, and that is downtimes. So we all know how fun it is to get ready, make our way to game. Camarilla culture revolves around gatherings where vampires come together to make alliances or annihilate their enemies through the politics of the court. But a lot of what Kindred do at gatherings is tied to what they're up to outside of it. Thematically, once you leave the Ivory Towers gathering, your character is just out there living their best life. And the way they do that is through downtimes. By Night Studios was kind enough to chat with us about what that looks like in the new Laws of the Night system. So we have a lot of people who love their downtimes in our game, and a lot of people like me who miss the point of how important those are. What is the new, what's new with downtimes in Laws of the Night system? What's changed?
Okay, so I love the new downtime system.
Okay, I'm so excited. Tell me.
I rant about it. I think it's really cool and simple. And there's a lot of changes in there that make people's lives easier, especially the lives of those hardworking storytellers. So the base idea is you get 3 downtimes ever. There are no other ways in the system to get them. No computers actions, no science actions. Backgrounds don't get their own actions. Rather, they're flavored as tools to use within your actions to help you tell your story and make the character's life easier. So one of the examples I like to give is the classic example that happens in tons of LARPs. You see a license plate, and the car is driving away, and you know that the person in that car mattered to what. So, in the olden days, you'd hit your contact, and you do that here too. One of the easiest ways to do what you want to do there would be like you go and you get use your DMV contact or your police contact as a downtime action. Say, oh, I want to get the information of that plate. I want to run that plate and know who did it. Well, great. You do that and you get your information. But let's say you don't have that contact, but you have some other tools. Maybe you got resources. Maybe you got maybe you've got a ghoul, and you want to have the ghoul go and try to bribe a police officer. Well, we have a one test resolution system that lets the storyteller do one test and quickly determine whether or not that attempt succeeded and the ghoul bribed the cop successfully, or if the cop maybe tried to arrest them or whatever the case may be. There's and if you don't have any backgrounds, which is challenging in this setting because you do get a fair number, but let's say you don't have any backgrounds that apply. Well, it might be that your downtime action is you personally going in there with your vampire and trying to sneak onto the computer and hack it or whatever the case may be. That's 3 different examples of ways you can use downtime action, but it's a lot easier when you have a background supporting it. So summarizing, 3 downtimes. Backgrounds are designed to make the downtimes easier, and there is a one test mechanic to let the storyteller decide, oh, well, I don't know how this should resolve. Let's, throw one shot, rock, paper, scissors, done. Okay, now I know how it went. And then they get right back to telling the story. So it's quick, it's efficient, and it leans into downtimes being about creating story rather than about throwing 50,000 actions at a wall, which I think lots of storytellers have experienced, and that makes the job hard sometimes. There's a lot of work that goes into running downtimes and writing them. So everybody kind of wins in this scenario.
Nice.
Anyway, that's my answer.
Okay, so you mentioned computer actions not being part of downtimes. Did I understand that correctly?
That's right. There are 3 actions. There are no other ways to get more actions.
Okay, so there's no herd actions. There's none of that kind of stuff.
No, they're all herd. Herd has effects, but it's not an action in itself.
Gotcha. Okay, can you tell us a little bit about mortal connections? It sounds like an interesting new mechanic and a new way that you guys are evolving that.
Yeah. So mortal connections are there's sort of 2 parts to it. One is the spheres of influences, which is we provide you a number of spheres in the world where people gather. So, for example, the church, police, the street, nightlife, that things like that. And it used to be you'd have to make your own spheres up. We've given you those spheres now. So there is a block of, there are a number of spheres. That's what exists in the world, and everyone has consistent spheres across their games. Now, within those spheres exist the mortal connections, people. And mortal connections represent the people that the characters deal with. The backgrounds that you can purchase, so for example, allies and contacts. They're touchstones, which relate to their convictions.
Mm-hmm.
These are people who are all connected to the player characters who matter in their lives. They represent a real person. So not a group, not an amorphous sphere of influence. And how one of these mortal connections is built, the ones you could buy, for example, like an ally or a contact, they're on a 1 to 3 system, not a 1 to 5 system. So there's the 3 base dots, but then there are advantages you can purchase that sort of customize them a little bit, and disadvantages you can take that sort of are like flaws for them. They give you a free advantage in return. So, for example, if you have a person who is, for example, a nightlife, like an ally who's a nightlife promoter who's getting really involved in politics, and they're in sort of 2 spheres of influence, there's an advantage that lets them get information and do things in 2 spheres of influence. So it kind of expands them a little bit there. Now, we've narrowed mortal connections down to make them more efficient. So retainer used to be its own background. Mm-hmm. It's not anymore. It is an advantage that attaches to an ally. So let's say you want to make your ally into a ghoul. Well, there's a 2-dot advantage called retainer, costs you 6 XP, and you slap it on that ally, and that ally now has the minor supernatural template ghoul. So there are a couple of things that get added to them. They get a couple of powers, and they're super loyal. As well, with this new design, the background influence is not in the game. There's no more amorphous, broad sphere of influence. Rather, vampires interact with their world through the people that they're connected to, so their allies and their contacts. That keeps it personal. That makes it where you've got an individual in the world, and they matter to somebody. And so by using the mortal connection spheres of influence and the relationship chart, which we describe in the book, which is setting out these spheres and placing the characters into them, the NPCs into them, players can really help their storytellers populate their world with mortal NPCs that matter a lot to them because they're personal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's such a big part of the game. And I think that I don't want to speak for Alex, but I feel like having like too much backstory with too much detail, including some of those mortal connections, is never a bad thing for a storyteller.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
You can really, if a character, if a human NPC matters to a character, and they're one of their specific people that they rely on to live their lives and get things done, a storyteller pulling on those a little bit, or another player pulling on those a little bit, can really ratchet up the drama in a cool way.
Yeah, it's super cool. Okay, so thank you for talking to us about the aspects of the game. Any final messages for the K-Knights out there watching?
So some of the most fun that you can have with mortal connections in building your characters, selecting where you get them from. Mortal connections, yes, everyone gets free background dots as part of their build, but they also can get mortal connections through their predator type and through their lore sheets, where they can decide, how did I get these these allies from being a friend, or a member of a high clan, or how did I get this criminal contact by being an alley cat? So it connects the characterization and the building of who this person is to their backgrounds that they would have. And I think that that's a very cool part of the system that I think is a great final message.
Nice. Thanks again. Ever since Cain smacked Abel and got busted by God, celerity has been a huge part of combat in Vampire. So if you're an escape artist, long-distance runner, maybe a little murder hobo in your blood, this is information you're going to need to construct or escape those infamous kill boxes. in the modern knight. Thankfully, though, we have some experts here to help. Jason, what is your favorite physical discipline? And tell me again why it's Celerity.
Well, it's fairly easy. Celerity has always been one of the best disciplines. Now, previously it was the best discipline because it unlocked you extra action. So you got to spend most of the combat doing stuff while people with Celerity sat there and watched you do it. Now, that may sound fun for some people, but it's really not. We wanted to get rid of extra actions. A lot of people have asked to get rid of extra actions for a long time. So we've got rid of it. So it's my favorite discipline because it's all new. And of course, everybody likes new shiny stuff.
Absolutely. So what are some of the biggest differences between Celerity and like in the new book versus the BNS LARP books of old?
Right. So, I mean, there's a couple similarities, but for the most part, it's that loss of extra actions, which is the biggest change.
Right.
So what we had to figure out a way to, like, what are we going to do with Celerity powers if they're not giving extra actions? But it means that everybody now gets to interact the same number of times each turn. And there's also just one turn at a time. There's no different levels of a turn where you've got different people going different amounts of time. So now Celerity is all about movement and for the most part ranged attacks. And also in this system, like every other discipline, there are multiple choices for your powers at each discipline dot that you buy.
Right. And is that going to reflect more of what's in the V5 tabletop books, or is it one of those major differences?
So we tried to convert as many tabletop powers as possible. Some are just kind of don't work in a LARP setting. And then, of course, also there isn't two options for every discipline dot in tabletop currently. So we wanted to fill in some of those blanks, and we wanted to add some new powers of our own.
Okay. And so if there are two disciplines available at level 1, for example, is this something that you can pick up like both of those at level 1, or can you only buy one of the two level 1 disciplines at a time? Does that question make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
So every time a character gains a dot in a discipline, they have to choose one power from the discipline list. And that power choice can be equal to or less than the new level of dot that she has purchased. So if I buy my third dot of Celerity, I can choose a Celerity power from level 3, 2, or 1. So I could choose the other level 2 power, or I could choose one of the level 3 powers. So you're only ever going to have 5 Celerity powers. But of course, instead of buying the 5th level power, you could buy both of the 4th level powers. So for example, when you buy your third dot of Celerity, you can choose between Blink or Nimble Departure. Those are the two third level powers. Blink very simply gives you 3 extra steps of movement whenever you spend an action for movement, whereas Nimble Departure makes it easier for you to fair escape from a combat scene. So that's a pretty interesting choice. Do you want to be running around the battlefield real fast, or do you want to run away from the battlefield more easily?
Sure. So, and fair escape, I do want to expand on that just a little bit. The fair escape rules are going to be available, but can you explain a little bit about how that's going to be used to a player's benefit during LARP?
Yeah. So fair escape is a term in LARP basically for when I want to run away and leave combat. Now, normally you have to do this on your initiative turn, which then declares to your enemies that you are running away. Then they have the opportunity to attack you. Well, with Nimble Departure, I can act normally through my turn, and if at the very end of the turn, if I'm not successfully attacked, I can then declare Nimble Departure and I'm free to leave the scene. So it's a matter of, I don't have to flag myself as running away, alerting everybody to go, okay, we got to grab that guy or attack him or something like that. I can just do my thing, and then at the end of the turn, if it's convenient for me and I want to, I just declare that power and off I go, and I can fair escape.
Okay, so I just need to grab a pen. So Celerity, I'm just making notes from when I have to do my character build. Celerity 3 and Nimble Escape. We're going to get that one real sure. Yeah. Escape. Perfect. Okay. So is there anything else, any final thoughts that you have on Celerity? What's like your favorite thing that you've added to Celerity before we move on?
Yeah, so one of my favorite power names, it's always fun when you add new powers to the system to come up with new names for it. Mm-hmm. One of the top 5 power is called Bullet Storm. I think people are going to like that. We're actually going to preview that power, I think, on the backer kit in the next couple of days. So we'll save that for later. But Bulletstorm, yes, it'll be fun when people yell out, "I'm declaring Bulletstorm."
Okay, so level 5, 5 celerity. Sorry, I'm just. It's kind of like my cheat sheet for making my character. Celerity 5, Bulletstorm. Perfect.